Welcome to Coffee with the Sarlos. We are your hosts of the show, Karen and Kelly Sarlo. Whether you're struggling with grief or you just need answers, we connect you with spirit to find relief, clarity, and direction in life. We can help you move forward.
Hi, Kelly.
Good morning.
Good morning. I have two sisters that have a session together, one alive and one dead. And the names come from Lithuania. And this is a little bit of interest, I think. Lema is one name and Dyma is the other name. And when I went to look up how to pronounce these names, because I'm trying to be a better podcast host and coworker, I found out that Dyma is actually a really popular name because of characters in some kind of a show. So because I don't watch a lot of TV and movies, I have no idea what show, but I know the name is popular. So the sister that is alive is Lema, and the sister that is passed is Dyma. And Lema asks me at the beginning of the session, after we go through the consent process, if I can connect with her sister. And I said to her, "Oh, you're requesting medium, correct? Your sister is passed?" And she goes, "Why wouldn't you know that?" And I said, well, some people ask for soul contracts and you didn't pick a service. You just said your sister. And some people ask for medical intuitive about somebody. So actually you could say something like, "Can you get my sister?" And there are a variety of services that you could be requesting. So I'm checking in to see which of the services you're looking for. And she goes, "Well, if you're a medium, you should know that." And this is how her session begins. And I said, I'm still asking you to choose your service, and I am saying that's what I'm getting, that you're asking for medium. That's how I'm wording it.
It's asking for the first affirmation.
Yeah.
Participate, or why are you here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So
That will be my attitude for this podcast, by the way.
you're going to need it. Oh. It doesn't improve.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope you have a lot of caffeine in your coffee.
Well, you might wish the opposite soon.
So I said to Lema, I've written down on the page it's medium, and she goes, "Oh yeah." She says, "Can I see it?" Because I had told her during consent that I would doodle some notes and that I would always show them to her during the session. And I said yes. So I had written down medium, sister, and then so I show her, and she says, "Why did you have to go and make this such a big deal?"
I'm sorry, you wanted to see the big deal.
Yes. Yeah. So I said to her, well, I wrote down on the page which of the services the guide said that you wanted. So I'm always educating. I'm always choosing education. And I said, so this is how this works. I wrote it down and I show you. And I word it this way so that you can do the validation. And she goes, "Well, aren't you supposed to know the dead person?" And I said, "I'm not repeating myself." I said, "I'm going to move on and I'm going to go into some of the validations from your sister." And so she just sits very neutral faced. And so I began and I said, "Okay," I said, "so your sister is saying that your mom and your dad have both passed." And she just kind of goes to say something. And on the page, I write step dad, because I'm being told that as something specific to add to mom and dad have passed. And then I write step, but then I put a dash and I go, what did I write? Something to the effect of, but actually is her father.
Like he raised her?
Yeah, like he raised her. And she says to me, "You got that half right and half wrong." And I said, "Okay." So I pull up the sheet and I show her the sheet and she reads the sheet and she goes, "Oh." And I said, "I need more than "oh," Lema." I said, "I'm showing you, and this is how this works, is that I write it down, I say it to you, or one or both." And I said, "And it's up to you to correct." And she goes, "Well, why would I do that? You're supposed to know." And I said, Lema, I said, the whole session is going to be very difficult. I said, if you aren't willing to be here to say what the validations are, because it's my job to tell you everything I'm getting through all of my senses, but it's always the client's responsibility to validate if it's correct or it isn't correct, so that we know the level of accuracy, and we both want to know that, because we're trying to connect to your people. This is about connection.
Could you imagine walking into our chiropractor's office and zipping our mouths, and he's like, hey, what do you need done today? And it's like, shouldn't you know? You're the chiropractor. Mm-hmm. And not revealing our needs, not revealing, like, and saying what our little pangs and concerns are, and just being like, you fucking figure it out. Like, it's so, and I'm trying to illustrate different professions, right? It's just unnerving how much withholding someone is willing to do. Now, I understand that that comes from an honest place. She's probably had a lot of trauma in her life, a lot of rejection in her life. There's empathy that sits at the bottom of my attitude. But, like, come on. If you're going to access a service for a professional to get help for yourself, show up and fucking participate.
Thank you. So then in the session, I say to her, okay, I say, I tell her that about her dad, like that he's her stepfather, but he's actually the one that's raised her and lived in that home, like for most of her life. So from early childhood. And she goes, oh, yeah. And I said, so she says, do you know roughly around what age?
So now we want to nitpick.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it can't just be true. It has to be down to the fine hair true.
Well, and I do learn through the session that it isn't even just to that. She always wants to go to the point where she finally gets it that I'm wrong about something.
Right.
So she's always seeking to see where I'm getting something wrong, to be able to step in and then attack me. And this is her whole session.
Which one of the parents did that to her?
Both. Both. And that's what comes through from her sister, Dyma.
That's why I said, like, she obviously comes by it honestly.
Yeah.
That would be revealed.
Okay, then Dyma says, my sister has 2 children, both biological. So I offer that to Lema, and she goes, yeah. I finally get a direct answer.
But as a psychic, shouldn't you know that?
Right. And then Dyma says, we have 3 brothers. And I write that down. So I'm very careful because I see the personality. And so I make sure that I'm writing everything down. So instead of writing a few notes, I had pages of notes.
I also want to point out how wonderfully the spirit guides are taking care of you.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't have to be every psychic's process.
Yeah,
that doesn't have to be every medium's process. You do not have to jot down notes ahead of time to double prove the messages that you're delivering.
Yep.
Like that is a kindness that they have provided you.
Yes.
And this woman is lucky.
Yeah.
She picked you.
I've been to many psychics and none of them wrote notes. Well, pardon me, one man wrote notes.
But that's their process.
Wait, I want to clarify. The entire page of notes he wrote for me were all squiggle lines, straight lines, and circles.
So just doodles.
Doodles.
That's not
there
notes.
There wasn't a single word on, pardon me, notes was the wrong word. There wasn't a single word on the page that I could decipher or put anything together that had any kind of meaning at all. And every other psychic, medium, anybody I've ever seen has never given me a single piece of paper with any validations written.
Which is fine.
That's right. Absolutely. Because that's the way that they're offering their service. Mm-hmm. So I go through and I keep showing her the notes, and her sister says, okay, so there are 3 brothers. And then her sister, Lema says to me, older or younger than me.
Fuck off.
And I said to her, no. I said, you're not going to treat the spirit world and your sister like that. And she says, pardon? And she says, I thought I was here for you to give me validations, and that's what you said at the beginning, that you'd give them to me.
No, who the fuck needs validations? You know you have 3 brothers. You know you had a stepdad that raised you. You come to a medium for fucking messages. Messages and validations are 2 different things. You came to test, and you're being a twat.
Okay.
We're in a time
Yes.
where behavior just needs to be called what it is.
Yes.
And people need to be held fucking accountable.
Yes.
And you did a great job, by the way.
Yep. So thank you. So I said to Lema, I said, I'm not going to sit here and have you abuse your dead sister. And Dyma says to me, thank you. And when I heard that, I almost cried. For Dyma, I almost had this moment of, oh my God. And it hit me. Lema booked an appointment with me to be able to abuse her dead sister. It hit me. And I confronted her. I said, oh my goodness. I said, Lema, I said, you've set up this appointment and you've been antagonistic at the very beginning with me, trying to abuse me. But your real goal is to get past me to abuse Dyma. And I said, because you abused her in real life and she abused you in real life. And she goes, well, I'm just here to finish an argument. And I said, it's more than that. I said, it's not. And she goes, yes, it is. You said we had conversation. And I said, conversation. And wait, I said, I offer my clients conversation with the spirit world, not an access to abuse. And I said, if you want to refer to me as the gatekeeper to the spirit world, just because I'm the human that connects you to them, there is no way that you're going to sit in this session and abuse Dyma. Not for a single moment. It's not going to go that way. And I said, and I need you to know right now that the abuse that you are trying to dish out at me is not going to happen either. So I need for you to understand that right here now, that there is no refund. No refund. You're not going to come and show up and abuse and then think you're going to get your supper back after you've eaten it. And she goes like this. And I just listened for a second. Dyma tells me, keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. And so I stop. I just don't talk. Boy, do I ever want to say a lot, but I can't because Dyma's telling me, keep your mouth shut. So I'm like, quiet. And Lema says to me, she told you that, didn't she? About the dinner, about the restaurant. I'm just like, oh, okay.
So you used an analogy that was true to a real situation in their life. I love the spirit world.
Yes. Yes. And she says, because the last time, and then she goes into explaining to me the last fight she had with Dyma at a restaurant, in a restaurant, about Lema's behavior. And Dyma calling her out on it.
Sweet.
Yeah. And that she wants to get into this fight and go at her sister again. And I said, no, I said, we're not going to do that.
No, and think about the two different ways of wording this. Let's finish an argument. Let's resolve an argument. She walked in and said, let's finish it, meaning I'm going to get the last say, the last punch, the power over. When you show up to a medium, and tons of people do, to say, I need to resolve an argument with my dead loved one, there is a desire to seek to understand, right? To hear different perspectives, to understand your role as well as their role, intent, etc., to hear an apology, to offer an apology, etc., to repair a fucking relationship.
Yes.
You want to finish something? Go book a rage room.
I made the comment to her, if you want that kind of an argument with her, you need to go to therapy. I said, I don't do that. I said, this is where you need to go to therapy to express your anger and to get the tools as to how to express anger healthily.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to resolve anything.
I understand, but
That's not what therapy's for.
Okay. I'm
Sorry.
just saying to you what I said to her.
Okay.
And thank you for telling that, because people listening to it do need to hear what you're saying.
Do not call a therapist if you don't want to resolve your issues. That's not what they're there for either. If someone sat down in my life coaching chair to vent about their situation, I would say, we are done here. This is not what I do. This is not the service that I offer. Don't call a therapist for that either.
Then I'll say right here and now in this podcast, my apology to the therapist if she chose one.
Yeah.
To call that therapist, I will now apologize.
It's like
officially
calling our chiropractor and saying, I would like to come and just vent about my neck pain. Don't touch me.
Okay, yeah, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah,
So,
I
okay, I will get my shit together better about referring to a therapist then. Now, having said that, I simply said to her, I need a minute because I want to listen to your sister. And I want to channel like a whole file, like download for you. I see it coming in. I feel it coming in. I need time. So she sits there and she just says, yeah, no problem. Fine. She says, I'm going to go get something and I'll be right back. So she leaves.
She's emotionally detached from the situation anyway.
Totally. And I laughed at her getting up and leaving at that point, because most people will say something like, I need to go to the bathroom. Usually there's a reason that they have to go, as opposed to, I'm just going to go over here for a while and come back whenever you're ready type of thing. When they're in the middle of a session and I'm still working. Mm-hmm. So I thought, oh, what you do you. I'm going to get my download and continue. So I see Dyma showing her mom and dad. And I get to see, oh my goodness, how they speak to each other is every single form of verbal abuse that Patricia Evans writes in her book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship. Every single one of them. And I see how when the girls are, all of them, and their brothers, when they're small, how they really go at them to push these little kids to the end, which is, how far do you have to push a kid? Because their brain is still developing. They don't know how to come back against a grown adult in a conversation when they're being abused. So I can then see how these two girls' brains just don't fully develop. They don't develop. And so I say to Dyma, oh, you're saying both your brains didn't develop, and you want me to tell her that? And she goes, yes. I want you to explain that this is part of the reason why we never come out of our behaviors. And if she doesn't actually get the help to create those healthy wires in her brain, that she's never going to come out of the suffering that she's in. I said, okay, I can do my best to explain that, given that I'm not a neuroscientist, just given the education I've got and who I am.
Don't think the average person needs the neuroscientist explanation. I think they need the layman's direction.
Fair enough. So maybe, I did a better job than I thought, but I would never know given my client's attitude in the entire session. And I think that's important to say, because if I just go off of my client's behavior in a session, or even the follow-up email, or whatever,
the couple follow-up email.
Yes. Mm-hmm. If I go by that, I would think I was a failure. By their responses.
This is why we always say your use of healthy tools and your execution of healthily delivering those tools, their response or reaction is not usually a reflection of how well you've used your tools, right? We can't look at another person and think what they're mirroring. Well, it's not mirroring at that point, but how they're behaving is always a reflection of how well we've done.
Exactly.
When you're talking calmly to a toddler and trying to explain the rationale as to why you can't lick the outlet in the living room and they're screaming at you, this is not a reflection of how poorly you communicated. Okay? You're welcome. I'm on fire with examples today.
You are so good. You're bringing some humor to me, and I think probably to the people listening, because the entire session, her attitude and her refusal, I'll say, for the entire session to try to find some connection to me or to connection to Dyma actually is never there. And that's brought up, that she never came to actually make a connection, that she came to have that fight. But the fact is that she calls the fight the connection. And that we had to split that up in the conversation to say to her, like I literally had to say, I believe that you're trying to connect to your sister. And she goes, I am. And I said, and your idea of connection is to have the fight. And she goes, yes.
That's what's familiar.
Exactly. And I said, okay. And I said, she's explaining that and she's showing back into your childhood that that's how you communicated with all of your siblings. That's how you communicated with friends who then eventually ghosted you unless they grew up in the same kind of home where that was normal, acceptable behavior to be abused. And that's how I feel needed, validated, loved, some kind of safety, though I know you would argue that that's no kind of safety, but that's the level of safety that she was provided in life and is still living into this very day with her own partner, her own kids, like, and what she's doing to her own children.
Yeah.
And her sister, her dead sister, is really trying to make the point, and now this is where I want to go next, is really trying to make the point that since she's died, that she's learned better, that she didn't learn to do anything differently on earth. So she's trying to show up and say, hey, you came here for the old me, but since I've died, I've healed and I've changed. And the new me with all of this new knowledge and all of these new tools understands the hurt and the pain that you're in. And I want to be here to love you, but you're not, will you let me love you? Will you let me talk to you? Will you let me give you the resources? Can we discuss some of those things? And so I get to the point in the session where I get to explain that and offer that to her. And that's when Lema says to me, I don't think you have my sister at all. And we're right back. The entire session was a loop.
Yeah, that's frustrating because that's the whole reason that the affirmations happened at the beginning.
Exactly.
To be able to go, okay, wait, she was accurate about, I have a sister that's dead. She was accurate about my 3 brothers. She was accurate about my parents and their relationship and how I was raised. She was accurate about XYZ of behavior and dynamics. Therefore, when I receive the messages of this evolved dead person, I should be able to trust the messages given the accuracy of the affirmations. And yet, when we don't hear what we want to hear about the messages, we decide, you don't have my person. And what a powerful weapon they think they are wielding, because you don't actually, as Karen Sarlo, know the dead person.
Exactly.
So they can just hold this power over you and hoping that you are going to be like, oh, okay, sorry, and work harder to just tell them what they want, in which case they came to the wrong person, because you have the confidence and the accuracy, right? To be able to say, no, that's not how the process works.
Exactly.
And you did describe her sister. You did describe the affirmations of how they fought and how they connected. She's overlooking it because she doesn't want to hear it.
And then when I show her the page and I explain that to her, when she wants to, 50 minutes into the session, say, well, I don't think you have her, which is like bringing me back to the very first few minutes of the session. I just hold up the page and say, you're the one that marked the page. You're the one that gave me the check marks to say we had accuracy. And I said, you're the one that, even though you didn't like some of the validations because you wanted something else, they were the validations your dead sister gave me. I can only give you the validations your sister chose, not the ones I chose. I don't choose any for any client. That's not my prerogative. And I said, and it's important that it's not my prerogative.
Yeah, you're a channel.
Exactly, because it's not my job. It's not what I'm supposed to be doing to begin with. My job is simply to sit there and say to the dead person, what are your validations you're giving your alive person? And I'm just conveying them. But Lema really wants to pin it on me that I don't make the right choices as to what those validations should have been. And that comes through in the follow-up email that I knew was coming. I was just trying to guess which day. If it would be on the third day or the fourth day or 1 week later. And her sister says, you'll be getting that within 24 hours. And she was exactly right. Yeah, I would say that before I even ended my work day and saw my next couple of clients, her email had already come in. And actually her email came in with complaints. She didn't ask for a refund. She didn't ask for anything. It was just a string of complaints of that there was no accuracy when the page was there. It was originally there.
It's good that you have a filing system for those emails. The trash bin.
Oh, I was just going to say, Kelly, no, I threw it in the trash.
Yeah. Also accurately filed.
I saw her email and I put it in the trash because I thought, oh, I'm not going to tolerate her abuse.
No, thank you so much for this hot air. I know exactly where to put it.
Yes, and I'm not going to go back to your sister and ask her if I did this right. I'm not going to go up to my spirit guides and say, did I get this session right? I'm not going to do anything. I'm simply going to move on with my day. That's it. But I wanted to point out to Kelly at one point in the session how her sister came through to go through the forms of verbal abuse and say to her, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to say this. Her sister, when she and I were able to speak and communicate, so Dyma and I were totally good to get all the messages in. And she said, these are the things that I did. This is what I did to her. I'm here today to say I'm sorry to her. Whether she's here to hear me or not, she is recording the session. I want to make apologies to my sister about my behavior. And when I went through and I listed them, I had to say to Lema what this was. So if I said she was dismissive, she'd go, no, she wasn't. And I would have to give an example of when her sister was, when Dyma was. And then she'd go, oh, yeah, okay. But later in the email, I didn't get her sister.
Right.
And I
stand by my name calling. I know it's verbal abuse. I'm just going to lay it out there. I want you guys to know that I know what I did.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to say this. I'm labeling the behavior. You are acting like A, right? I'm not saying you are. Mm-hmm. It's not who she is. It's not her identity. She's choosing to act in a particular way. Mm-hmm. And that's also not to defend. I want to be clear about that. I like to show up animated for the ability to express the listener's anger, frustrations, delight in some cases. Like, I think so many people use these podcasts as a wonderful opportunity to learn about themselves and to learn about others, and also as a little bit of catharsis for what they are feeling about their own lives or their own situations. So I do think sometimes the heat is necessary.
Thank you. So Dyma says to me to say to her, and I do in the session, that Dyma wants to acknowledge to her sister that she screamed at her, she yelled at her, she walked away from her, and then she listened.
Which is also, by the way, another form of dismissing.
Right. And yeah, but I'm just wanting to say all of the words because her sister needed to hear them broken down into very layman's.
Oh yeah, not psychology terms? Because she ain't reading the book, we'll tell you that much.
Yeah, she needed to hear it, and she needed to get some of the examples as to how they spoke to each other to understand it is abuse. Mm-hmm. And her sister says to her, Dyma says, in an effort, I did these things in an effort to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, to be understood, in an effort to be loved in some way, to gain security, to gain some stability, to gain some identity. And so she lists these things, and she says, I did all of these things in an unhealthy way for things that are actually healthy. But you can't do it in an unhealthy way and think you're going to get those healthy things.
Yep. I just had this conversation with a client the other day who admitted that she screams and yells at her kids and whatnot, and we're working through that. And I just said, just because I feel awful, and I said, no one chooses to do those things because it feels good inherently. It might feel good when you have a little sense of a power over and we get a little bit of a warped kind of identity in that moment, but no one chooses to do those things because it's the most favorable option. We yell because we don't feel heard. We get loud because someone is being louder, right? So it's an effort to be seen and heard, and it sucks as an option. But when we grow up in an environment or we're surrounded in an environment where it's necessary and it's the only way to be heard, and maybe we don't have an option to leave, it becomes a part of our patterns and our habits and our routines. And when we get out of those environments, maybe these two are adult sisters now, and we don't have the loudness that we used to have, the patterns are still ingrained in us. And so we revert, not even back, pardon me, we just continue on with the same methods of communication, right? Not understanding that we can choose something differently now.
Yeah, perfect. And then one of the other things that happened in the session was that Lema would always say to Dyma, this isn't you. And Dyma would always say, yes, it is. It's the dead me. And you booked a session with a medium for the dead me. And we had to constantly circle back to that repeatedly. Oh my God, I don't even know how many times. I had to keep trying to explain that she was looking for her alive sister, and that's the first part of the session for the validations. But that when we get into conversation with a person that's died, we are looking for the healthier version. If you're not looking for that healthier version, why are you seeking out a medium?
But it's not even just the first half, because she's saying that she verbally abused you. She did this, this, and
Yes,
this.
right.
Affirmation. Here's what she's learned. So it's flipping and flopping throughout the session to say, here's what was alive, here's what is dead, right? Again, like each time you have to deliver a new message, there's a lot of opportunity for her to connect dots and not just have to think back to the beginning of a session.
Yeah. Which she seems incapable of doing. I'll say unwilling of doing, and stubbornly refused to do to the very end.
Yeah. Emotional dysregulation will allow you to behave like that.
Exactly. And I do remember at one point in that session that we talked about emotional regulation, emotional dysregulation. And even when I explained it to her, there were points where she would sit there and go, okay, I understand that. But then she'd go into it and I would try and point it out and she would get angry.
Yeah, because it's shameful. And I'm not saying she should feel ashamed.
Yeah.
That's what we get filled with, right? Automatically, especially if she's been treated the way you've talked about.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. So
I just got over it. Are we done? This was enough time spent on this, right?
yes. And I was just
all of us listeners put in our due diligence.
I was just going to say to you, Kelly, that was the end of the session, and that the session did not end in a satisfactory way.
Well, clearly you got an email in 24 hours.
Exactly. Like she just was like, okay, well, thank you. My time is up. It's 10 o'clock or whatever. She announced the time, like as a way to be like, okay, I'm dismissing you. You didn't meet any of my needs. I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get my fight. I didn't even get to fight with you.
So I'm going to do my nice summary then, right? Because everyone knows clarity, relief, and direction in one of those orders. I have not memorized our slogan. I don't like the clarity you gave me. I don't appreciate the direction that you just offered me. And I really like my dysregulation, so no thank you with the relief just yet. And I'll say just yet. But you did your fucking job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still get to happy dance with her sister.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to say, I don't want to make it all about me, but I just want this little part to be, and to happily share it with you and with everybody, is that like her sister showed up to love her. And that is the responsibility of the spirit world. Mm-hmm. Her sister showed up with the truth and the tools, and that is their job.
Yeah, in spite of the fact that she knew her sister came to fight.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I love that, because ultimately, all of us listeners can walk away understanding they're all rooting for us.
Yes. Exactly. And they're looking for us to succeed and to get healthier. No matter how hopeless or how much we struggle or how much pain we're causing ourselves and other people, their hope for us to be better than what we currently are it never dies. And it's my job just to sit there and give that message.
Thank you for listening to Coffee with the Sarlos. If you enjoyed the show today, please be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform and leave a review. New shows will air every other Saturday.